All right. So, like the multiverse is a victim of Kathleen Kennedy, so too is the American universe the victim of Joe Biden. Oh my God, you guys! I'm dying over here talking about this stuff. I hate these people. Ah,
Well, don't hate your opponent.
I know.
Hate corrodes. But Joe, I want to jump back to you because as you mentioned, it is Black History Month, and ladies and gentlemen, you are talking with Joe Pinion, who is the first Black candidate for United States Senate in New York in either party. So, Joe, you are part of Black History Month. You're a guy from Yonkers, right? You're
history.
What? You're part of history. Exactly, right? You're a guy from Yonkers, or did I get that right? It's Yonkers, right?
Yep. Yonkers, New York.
Yonkers, New York. But so I want to go closer to home to New York City. We're still staying with the immigration topic, but now you have Mayor Adams in New York City, where they're going to hand out debit cards for, I don't know, $1,000 a month, right?
It's a brand.
Right. And I guess
Our brand is chaos.
Well, our brand is incentive, right? I mean, if I'm going to get, I'm an illegal immigrant. I'm going to get free food and free lodging, and I'm going to displace American citizens and get free education. And by the way, when the Biden administration is moving around these illegal immigrants, we all know, or at least I know, what happens is they fly them to different locations, and there's a special line at TSA, which even if they choose to, they don't have to get there's no ID anywhere. Right? If you're an American, you need identification. But Joe, what's going on in New York City? Because to me, all that is going to do is incentivize more people to come here illegally, provided there's no more than 5,000 a day, right? I mean,
yeah. You need to tell us why your people are crazy, Joe. Tell us.
Right.
Well, and this is the argument and the fight that I get in with my fellow Republicans and my fellow conservatives. I don't think New Yorkers are crazy. I think New Yorkers are suffering under the tyranny of crazy people. If you talk to the average person in Brooklyn, and even if you expand it outside of New York, you talk to every day, not just the people on the streets of Chicago, but also the people in the lower chamber of the state legislature in Illinois. You have plenty of aldermen in Illinois talking about if you are going to be giving Black people anywhere the type of accommodations that the state of Illinois and Chicago is offering to migrants, we would have had a population boom a long time ago. Can you imagine how many people would have been moving back to places like Gary, Indiana, or people would have been moving back to Detroit if all of a sudden we just started handing out $53 million worth of debit cards? I'm seeing all these towns in Vermont who are trying to basically buy you a house and pay you to live there to become a nurse. You don't think that if you were handing out these debit cards in all those small forgotten towns of Vermont, we could have gotten people to move there? So yes, when you juxtapose that with what is happening in places like New York City, where you have Black and brown people to the tune of over 300,000 officially, by some estimates over 600,000 people living in public housing, that is $80 billion behind on repairs. I will repeat, $80 billion behind on repairs. That is not the national bill for public housing in the nation. That is the delinquent bill for public housing in New York City alone. Wow. Just the 5 boroughs. So if you're that person living in that building where the elevators don't work because we had 20,000 that broke down, where there's lead in the paint, and this is documented, where there is arsenic in the water, and this is documented, and you're walking through the streets of Manhattan and you see people rolling into the Roosevelt Hotel with 3 squares and also a debit card to boot. At some point, something is going to be triggered in your mind saying, these people don't give you know what about us. Yeah. And I think that is where many people are. That is where the opportunity is for Republicans. We have to stop getting on Fox and Newsmax. I love them both, but we have to stop getting on TV and talking about what the Democrats have done. We must start going into communities and demonstrating what Republicans are willing to do in the name of making sure that, yes, we put Americans first, put the people who have made this country what it is first. And so if you're going to talk about Black history and all those great phrases used by all those great Democratic politicians, from Jesse Jackson to Barack Obama. Hands that pick cotton will pick a president. What is the virtue of having hands that used to pick cotton picking a president if they represent a political party that does everything humanly possible to put your needs and your ambitions on the back burner? So I think, again, there is an opportunity for the conservative movement. There is an opportunity for the Republican Party to say you are getting a live demonstration of just how little these people think of you, of just how stupid they believe you to be, because they can do this in broad daylight and still ask you for your vote with a straight face.
Oh my God, Joe. It is one of the things.
Joe, you just triggered her. I just want you to know.
You got me. Now I'm going. Well, because it's, being in an interracial marriage, there's so much that, like, just being honest, as a white person from Vermont, there was a bunch of stuff I didn't know, right? Because I grew up very differently. And then what was so frustrating about the Black Lives Matter movement is that there are legitimate problems in Black communities in the inner cities, and all of the legitimate problems got overlooked because of the salacious, outrageous way people were talking about things. And listening to you share, 20,000 elevators, arsenic, lead, and we can't pay reparations.
Let's not forget failing schools that trap them in the cities as well, because the only path out, right, of poverty, regardless of race, creed, or color, is education.
All right.
And
we all want our kids to be better, be more educated than we are.
Yeah, Flint, Michigan still has lead in the water.
Yep.
Right? We can't talk about reparations. We can't talk about fixing this stuff, but y'all are going to give $53 million in debit cards to people who aren't even Americans? No.
To that point, you talk about education, Robert. I have called it the education in this country is a civil rights issue of our time. What is happening in these public schools, it is disproportionately impacting minority students. In New York City right now, as we speak, we're at close to 75% of Black students not being able to do math at grade level. Right? 75%. That is not a typo. That means only around 25, 26% of the Black students are capable of doing math at grade level. The rest of them don't know what they're supposed to know. Across the state, we're looking at close to 60% of all children, all colors, all creeds, unable to read at grade level at a time when those fundamental tools for education are going to mean more than ever as we head into an automation era where they're going to have to be able to articulate more so than have a particular competence for coding or whatever, what exactly it is they're trying to solve from a problem-solving standpoint, right? So specificity of language is going to have a great impact on all the things that we do on a day-to-day basis moving forward. And none of it is happening because, to your point, they are so focused on dividing us. They are so focused on being anti-racist that they have ushered in some of the most racist and bigoted policies we have seen in a lifetime. Even if you look at what happened with Senator Tim Scott in the aftermath of his presidential race, or I would say in the winding final days of his campaign for president, where he proposed to individuals that he had been dating, and the way that he was spoken about, just by virtue of the fact that they knew they could get away with it, because he was a Black Republican, right, and the Black community would let him get away with it because the person that he had chosen to propose to was not a Black person themselves, but a white woman who happened to be a conservative. And so these mainstream media that loves to wrap themselves in the patina of respectability allowed the only Black man in the United States Senate who was Republican to be savaged in ways that they would never accept under any other conditions. And so now we have built this world where there is only one way to be Black. There's only one way to be a Black ally. And you know how you know that has become the case? Because now, even on places like Harvard University campuses, and even on places like the University of Pennsylvania campuses, you have Jewish students hiding in libraries for their life because the same Jewish people who were basically risking their lives side by side with black people who are buried in shallow graves as we speak that will never be discovered in the name of riding for freedom are now being told that their allyship is insufficient. And the only way for them to be a good ally is to side with Hamas, who doesn't think any Jewish people should exist anywhere.
Yeah,
that is the America that is being built right before our very eyes.
They basically are creating racists. It's like, it's okay for you to be a racist against people we don't agree with. First of all, right? They're like sanctioning racism against political opponents and then creating racists by all like the border nonsense and then just talking smack about each other and being so ugly. It's creating division where there doesn't need to be.
It's not creating division. It's fomenting division that was already there, right? I mean, you've got to sort of step back from all of this. When you look at, right, let's go, you had mentioned Martin Luther King, right? The I Have a Dream speech where I to want to live in a country where I'm judged by the content of my character and not the color of my skin. You juxtapose that with the Black Panthers movement, and the reason I bring that up is because basically Black Lives Matter is sort of a modern day version of the Black Panthers movement, including adopting their 10 or 14 points strategy, right, or belief position. And now it's like an Alice in Wonderland, right? If you don't judge people based on identity politics, then you are a racist. And by the way, as a white person, you have systemic racism. You're born racist and you can't help yourself. So they have made everyone into a victim. And let's not forget, social justice or justice is always rear-facing. It's who to blame and how to make reparations or fix the problem. And freedom is always forward-facing, Ericka. So they're dividing us because if they can divide us, it's easier to stay in power. And to me, I'm cynical. I'm from New Jersey. We all know that. It's all about staying in power. Joe, what say you?
It's 100% about power. And to the point where, here's what I always say. I don't get to tell you what to believe, but I do get to demand you be consistent. And even if you look at what has happened here, it was Malcolm X, of all people, who warned us that the northern white liberal was more dangerous than the southern segregationists, calling them the northern fox to the southern wolf. And yet somehow when these people try to embrace the mantle of black power, they ignore that fact, right? It was the old saying, from Huey P. Newton and Stokely Carmichael, power, It does not flow from the sleeve of a dashiki, it flows from the barrel of a gun. And yet somehow these are the same people who, in the name of black power, have sided with northern white liberals who try to unilaterally disarm law-abiding citizens, whom black women are the fastest growing segment of new legal gun owners because it's our communities disproportionately that have been turned into a shooting gallery by virtue of this ridiculous radical defund the police movement brought to you by the Marxists masquerading as people concerned for Black Lives to Matter. So yes, I think it is purely about power, and it has always been about power. And the time has come for minority communities to recognize that the power is vested in them. It is not vested in those who pretend to speak on their behalf.
That's right.
And I would argue that until the black community, any minority community, but until the black community understands that the Democrats have been using them as one of the pillars of their support without really, the black community did they benefit under Obama's policies? Not that I saw. Is the black community benefiting under the Biden policies? Not that I saw. But it does come down to votes matter and elections matter. So it's going to be interesting to see, given the rise of illegal immigration, which in New Hampshire was the #1 issue, and yes, we're a border state, but the focus is on the southern border, how that affects the black community's vote towards presumably who Donald Trump will be the nominee on the Republican side versus whether it's Joe Biden or somebody else.
Look, I think to that point, right, it's, if you take your Republican hat off, right, and just try to look at things from a logic standpoint, right, is it logical for someone to arrive at the conclusion that a vote for this party is going to benefit them? Well, if you look at somebody who was I call the not in my backyard northern white liberal crowd, perhaps it does benefit them to vote for Democrats if their main concern is being absolved of any guilt for how they're acting in the present. And that's what happens when Democrats line up and start talking about reparations for things that people that died long before they were born are responsible for, right? When New York State is talking about reparations, even though clearly it is a northern state where it is not responsible for the transgressions of history, right? So there's that perspective. If you're looking at the LGBTQ community, or however many letters have been added now, there is a very real argument to be made that even just in my adult lifetime, by the pushing of Democrats, there has been marriage codified at the federal level, and certainly before that at the state level for gay marriages. There are now laws being codified to effectively strip parents of rights to make sure that children can transition without their permission. You can make the argument that there are policies being passed that if you are someone that subscribes to that type of mindset, that would benefit you. You get to the Black community, you get to the Hispanic community, people who are here legally. I don't know how you make such a compelling argument. In fact, it goes the opposite way, right? There are schools in New York City right now where there is not a single Black child reading or doing math at grade level, right? That's a real thing. And these schools have not been decertified because we don't have the means or we don't have a method in place to decertify them. You go to places like Maryland, Baltimore, where we know, statistically speaking, over 70% of the high school students are reading at an elementary school level. This is child abuse that is being perpetuated by the people that you are voting for. And the only thing they have to say in their own defense is we're not spending enough money, even though in New York City alone, we're spending $38,000 per child. How much more money do you need? So, yeah.
It's because meritocracy is no longer, we don't want to be the best. We want to make everyone equal, and we want to solve the problems of the past, and it's racist to believe in meritocracy. And
here's
apparently, or any other of the things that they have just unilaterally labeled as racist. I'm pretty sure breathing is going to be next.
Hey, Joe.
Oh yeah, you definitely.
We're all
the
racist
white people. White people are definitely polluting the oxygen. Oh my God, I love it, you guys. And you know what else I love? You, Joe Pinion. You have been an awesome guest here on Of the People. We thank you so much for joining us this week. What fun. Love your perspective, and also love to hear what's going on up in the Northeast as a fellow Yankee myself. So thank you, Joe, for coming on this week. Where is the best place for people to go follow you? Is it Twitter? Is it YouTube? Where can they check you out?
Yeah, people can find me on Twitter, Joseph Pinion, one word, Pinion. They can find me on Instagram. I am Joe Pinion. They can go to joepinion.com. But look, I think all of these issues that we talked about simply highlight the fact that we cannot afford another 4 years of Joe Biden. We didn't even talk about the things that are happening beyond our border. This man has been sleepwalking our country to the precipice of a third world war. You look at what's happened with Iran, you look at what's happened with Russia and Ukraine, you look at what's happening in the South China Sea, and you look at the fact that the banker for all of this carnage occurring around the world has been a Chinese Communist Party that has gone unchecked by Joe Biden or the Democrats United States Senate. It'll all be fun and games until 40-year-old sons and daughters get letters in the mail saying that they must report for duty, because that's where we are right now with the tragic under-enrollment and lack of preparedness for our military. We're about 1 foot away from that. So this election is critical. I, again, believe that America will always endure, but will America endure in the fashion that we are accustomed to it? I don't know if that's the case if we give this man, Joseph Robinette Biden, another 4 years at the helm. So, again, get out, vote focus on those local elections, those state legislatures that are critical, those congressional seats are critical, a state senate in New York that we have to try to take back. I'm sure it's the same in New Hampshire. So get active, folks, because you got one shot to save your country.